So we've talked about the importance of oral language development and structuring the day so that you foster opportunities for oral language to happen. For example, in the morning meeting, helping children with a pattern of how to respond to a question, so that they're not having to come up with the language themselves. They've been able to rehearse it and listen to others use the same language. We talked about making the housekeeping center evolve into different content areas to match with different content areas, social studies, for example. So when it was Thanksgiving time, the children we talked about how they could be playing in a longhouse as opposed to in the kitchen, and how the IA could be with them using the language related to the content to give them that practice, so that then they could then go on and use some of that language themselves. Well, it's nice to know that it's still viable and useful to people, and I think it's fun for the new teachers who weren't here at the time we wrote the book, for them to look at the pictures and see the custodian lying on the floor to be measured and that sort of thing. They thought it was cool to make those connections to people and teachers and children that they knew. I think just one small thing was that the conversations have gone much better when we broke down into small groups, which sort of relates to what we were talking about with the children themselves, that they had a more intimate, meaningful conversation when they were in small groups. I think just in a big group, people are content to just sort of sit back and let other people talk, and so the same people always talk, and that's very much what happens with your mixed community, where you've got children who are more have more control over the language and therefore tend to do all the talking. So it ran parallel to what we were talking about ourselves and doing ourselves. What's changed since we wrote the book, The Words Came Down, has been partly what's changing in education at the state level. So some of the demands that are put on teachers restrict your time that you have to work on really what you know is best for children, which can be frustrating, obviously. And what else has changed? I think we've had a turnover of, well, I think the state standards have really changed the way we've had to teach. We've much more restricted in what we can do, where we can go with our ideas. It's not as student-driven and student-need-driven as it used to be. We need time more than ever, and I think there's so much pressure on teachers from demands at the national and state and county level that we don't have the time to spend on developing oral language. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, we say 7 to 10 years for language acquisition, and yet you're expected to have them ready for the students, ready for testing situations, and so the time restriction, I think, is what most people would feel hurts the most. Teachers, I think we take baby steps sometimes when we're changing our thinking, and so I think a careful choice of a book to make it meaningful and applicable would be important.